Yeah, the crawler wild's always bringing me home. Crawler wild's always bringing me home. Crawler wild's always bringing me home.
Hello, wild ones. Welcome to another episode of the Find Your Wild podcast. I'm so excited to have Kristen here for me, otherwise known as KPassionate online. How are you doing today?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Yeah, I love doing podcasts. They're super fun.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to chat and go deeper into certain subjects too. Although I do love your videos and I feel like I learn a lot just from the nice little click bites, from
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point. So yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, absolutely. When did you start your channel?
So the channel was kind of a COVID situation. So right around then, I started doing a little bit more in the content creation sort of realm. So it's not very old. Well, I guess now it's kind of feeling like
Crazy.
5 years
5
ago,
years.
I guess. So yeah, it's been a while. It evolved. It started as something completely different. If you really want to see something cringy, like go back to my very first videos. And I think you can do that with pretty much any creator and go back
Yeah.
and find their super cringe start. But and then it just sort of morphed into what it is today, and I really love it.
Yeah, I do too. I found your page definitely more recently, but when I found it, I was like, why didn't my algorithm suggest this to me sooner? I absolutely love it. I feel like you have a really great way of also like presenting information and also making it interesting at the same time, which is sometimes not always the easiest.
Yeah, well, thank you.
You're welcome. And I was curious, so how long have you been in the marine biology field?
Yeah, so I graduated university in, my gosh, 2011. Yeah. And then I got an internship at the Vancouver Aquarium. And so that was kind of the start of everything. I was just applying for, I always knew I wanted to work with animals. I've just always had a love for animals. And everybody would say, do you want to be a veterinarian? And I was like, no, I don't want to be a veterinarian. And I want to work with the animals. I want to know the animals. And so I applied for any and all internships, and I really wanted to work with big cats. That was the dream. So this has all been kind of a happy accident. And this internship was with beluga whales and sea otters, and I went up to Canada. I fell in love. I ended up getting a job there and stayed there for a very long time, and loved that, and cycled through a lot of different animals, learned a lot. And then I've been moving around a little bit ever since. But basically, yeah, since about 2011, I've been fully ensconced in marine biology.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's so cool that you were able to have that like more hands-on experience with them too, right?
Yeah.
Can't replace that.
No, I mean, and that was kind of always what I wanted. Was I wanted to have like strong relationships with animals. Always felt a connection to animals, sometimes even more so than people. And so that was what I wanted, and I think I got it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joey was a big part of your start with the Joey the Sea Otter, right? Was a big part of your start for your content creation. He's so cute. What's happening with him now?
Truth be told, I have no idea, being that I don't really work there anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. I'm glad you clarified Joey the Sea Otter, because Joey's actually my brother's name. And so I always get so confused. And when we were first naming Joey, I really fought against that name. I was like, this is my brother's name. So sometimes I still get confused.
That's so funny.
But yeah, I'm sure he's doing just fine. Yeah, I don't really, keep tabs on those guys too much anymore. But yeah, I haven't heard anything.
I'm
so.
sure they're in very good hands too.
Yeah.
When you were working with him, like what were some of and I know you go into that in like some of your videos, but like the I found it very interesting. Like the towels had to be washed a certain way, the intricacies of like the husbandry that I'm sure a lot of it has
Yeah.
like a lot of trial and error too.
Yeah, I mean, luckily it's a pretty honed process at this point. So, raising baby sea otters is something that I got a lot of experience with at the Vancouver Aquarium, starting with an otter named Katmai in 2011, or no, it was probably closer to, I don't know, it doesn't matter. And then like another otter named Tasli. I mean, basically all of those otters were all hand raised, and it's a pretty honed process, mostly by the Monterey Bay Aquarium and the Alaska Sea Life Center have really done the work to teach people how to do that
Yeah.
kind of thing. But yeah, you have to be really careful with a lot of things that you might not really think about. And yeah, the towels is a big one. So with sea otters, their fur is very, very important. And when sea otters are first born, they are born with a lanugo, which is different than the adult coat. And so it's really, really important that you keep that in really good condition. And unfortunately, mother sea otters know exactly how to do this, and humans are not that great at it. So it's something that takes hours, making sure that you're drying them and combing out any knots, because any kind of mat is going to pose a huge problem for the animal. And you do that for, 2 hours or so, and then the the pup, it's time for it to go to the bathroom again. So then you put it back in the water and you start the whole process all over again. So it's just like 24/7 care, and there's also the feedings, which is every couple of hours, and it's around the clock. So there's no, we're working all through the night, that type of thing. So there's a lot of things that people don't necessarily think about. And yeah, it's a lot of work. I've loved that I've gotten to do it like 3, 4, or 5 times or whatever, but I'm about done. I'm burnt out on the sea otter hand racing.
Yeah, there's only so much. I mean, I'm a mom too, so I
Mm,
get it. Like, just
yeah.
there's a lot of care that goes into that,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I
and
can get how that gets. Yeah.
and I'm not a mom, and I don't have intentions of being a mom, and so I think that's kind of where the like, yeah, this is enough for me. Like we did the cute, that was fun. Let's
Yeah.
let's be done with it now. I think sometimes similarly to being a mom, like my favorite part of raising the sea otter is when they're very, very little and they can't really move, they can't really do anything. It's the second they start to crawl that I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is a nightmare. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, very similar, just a little different, right?
Yeah,
They're a little
just
furrier.
yeah, a little hairier, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Um, yeah, but they're really cute. And then one of the other videos I was watching recently, I had no idea how intricate their role is in the protecting against like carbon emissions, and with the kelp forests too, which is absolutely incredible. I'm just gonna read like a quick fact that was at the end of your video, like a 1% increase in kelp sequestration
Like sequestration is probably the
sequestration due
yeah.
to sea otters is roughly equivalent to the annual emission of 100,000 automobiles and 5 million automobiles at the 50% kelp sequestration level. So
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's by Wilmer's 2012 study, I believe
Yeah,
that was
I've
there.
been advocating for sea otters and how they could essentially save the world for a really long time because they a kelp forest sequesters more carbon than a redwood grove, and it's
Wow.
just uh it's super important. The kelp forests and the sea otters are like the sort of the shepherds of the kelp forest, the keepers of the kelp forest, if you will. And so I've done a lot of work with the Alaka Alliance, which is an amazing organization that is trying to reintroduce sea otters off the coast of Oregon, which is part of their native range.
Mhm.
And did some fundraisers for them. We raised a bunch of money for those guys. I think like $20,000 or something.
Wow.
And been working really closely with them and the Oregon Coast Aquarium, and places like that, because I really feel like it could make a difference. And yeah, sea otters, it's like the cutest solution to
Oh yeah,
anthropogenic climate change that you can think of.
absolutely. Yeah. And they're not reintroduced yet, right? Like that's still in the process.
Yeah, they're trying to do it. It does become tricky because they are going to eat some things that people like to commercialize. So they're going to be eating crabs, they're going to be eating sea urchins and abalone and all of those things, and so some some people's lives would change a little bit. There would be, a bit more of, or a bit less of those creatures in that fishing industry. So there's some challenges, and it's not just as cut and dry as like sea otters are adorable, let's put them back. So there's a lot of, public commentary and a lot of things to take into consideration
Sure.
when doing that, but I particularly like Alaka Alliance because they really take into consideration the native peoples and their thoughts and feelings on that, and that makes up a large amount of their staff and their board and things, which I think is really important to be part of the discussion, and
Yeah.
traditionally hasn't been in the past when these animals were introduced to, like, British Columbia, for instance. That was a big issue, a big social issue when people did that without consulting proper people. So Alak Alliance is a great place to support if you're interested.
Yeah, I definitely am gonna look into them more after our chat. But yeah, I feel like that is really important because, I think so much of like the natives' land has been taken away, and these animals were just such an integral part of, their society, their relationship to nature. So to be able to give them that say back, I think is incredibly important. It's so nice that they're able to do that and to include them. I know that in Wisconsin, that's a big thing with the wolves and the native people and what's going on there. I do see a lot of similarities actually between wolves and otters too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, because they're really important for the environment as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it turns out kind of everything is, and but some seems a little bit more so than others. But yeah,
Right, yeah, like the way that they're like similar in my mind being that they help like the sea otters are focused on like the keeping the kelp forest and the wolves around the riverbanks and helping to, get rid of certain ungulates that
yeah,
overgraze that area too, like
yeah,
the sea urchins with the kelp forest.
yeah. The big population control. Yeah.
Yeah. And the sea otters right now, they're just in where are they found in the wild now?
Yeah, I mean, if you really wanted to go see wild sea otters, Alaska has the highest population of them right now. Easiest to see them up there, and so all along Alaska, down into BC, and they are really, the population off the coast of British Columbia is growing very
Mm.
steadily, that people are seeing them in a much wider range. It used to be they were pretty much grouped to like the just like the northernmost tip of Vancouver Island, but now they've really sort of spread out. So that's happening. You can find them in Washington as well, and those are all northern sea otters. The Washington up to Alaska, and then there's a gap in Oregon, and then in California we have southern sea otters, and so Elkhorn Slough, those types of places, also very easy to go see sea otters. But that population of those southern sea otters is basically entirely due to Monterey Bay Aquarium, another
Oh
great
wow.
organization that I've done
Yeah.
um, charities for, but they have a surrogate program down there. It was really the first of its kind, and now it's nice that there are some surrogate programs popping up in other areas, because it's a hard thing. So when we hand raise the sea otters, there's no way they can go back out into the wild. There's just We are just not sea otter moms, and sea otter moms have to teach their pups everything, how to groom their fur, how to eat, how to rest, how to do all of those things, and we're just not capable of doing that. So So once we hand raise them, they have to be ambassadors for their species in a zoo or an aquarium somewhere, which there's a lot of value in that. But what Monterey Bay Aquarium has had success with is they have some sea otters that live behind the scenes and they're experienced moms. And so they will give the pups to them, and those mums then teach the pups how to be sea otters, and then they release those pups. And they don't have a 100% success rate. I don't think anything has a 100% success rate, I guess. But,
Sure, right.
but they tag them, and if those sea otters go out and they do well and they're not bothering people, then they get to live their lives out there. So that population has really boomed since Monterey Bay did that, started that program, and so a lot of facilities are taking from Monterey Bay what they're doing and translating it to their own facility. But it's a logistical nightmare, I suppose, if you don't already do it. If you if you didn't build a very specific facility for surrogate sea otters, then you can't really just like do it.
Right. Yeah. That just, I'm assuming like because they would probably need their own space to hopefully not interact with them as much, so they would be more used to being in the wild, or
yeah, so they don't interact with them at all unless they
right.
are. You can actually look at. It's kind of scary. Look at pictures. If they do have to interact with them for whatever reason, they're wearing like these terrible, like black trench coats, and then this horrific like Darth Vader mask kind of a situation, and just to really not imprint on the pups at all, and if anything at all, to be scary to the pups, because that is what they should find humans is scary and something to avoid. So that's their strategy, and it's working. So it's nice to see that program is working. And then we have seen some sea otters move into Oregon occasionally. They unfortunately it's just like one individual and then they just leave or something happens. So it's sort of starting to meld, and eventually hopefully those northern and southern populations will kind of come back together, because it's not really they can interbreed. It's probably not really like it's an artificial southern and northern sea otter population,
Okay.
because of the gap in where they are.
Got it. Yeah, I was going to ask you if they could just close the gap themselves, right? Like,
I mean, given enough time, they just might. But it's just a matter of whether or not we can help them do something that they're already trying to do. That's a little bit difficult if you only bring one individual in there. They can't really like make any kind of difference. So,
of course, right? Yeah, you kind of need a bunch of them, and it's more than just throwing one out there,
right?
I don't know if you saw that they were releasing. In Scotland, I just saw some news the other day that they were releasing some European lynx illegally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a choice.
Yeah, I don't know the background of it. I think they're still looking for more information, but they caught two and they're in quarantine right now at some sort of wildlife park, and then will be brought to a zoo. But then they found two more
Oh no.
out in the wild. So
oh no.
Yeah, not
ideal.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I hadn't seen that.
Oh yeah. Well, it leads me to ask you, there's so much that I guess people don't immediately recognize, right? With like what happened with Lolita, the killer whale, with releasing her back into the wild, and why there need to be, like, I guess, more protections. You can't always just release them, right? Like you were saying, there's more intricacies even with the sea otters.
Yeah. Oh, you're going into hot topics.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, to be clear, it is my educated opinion they were never going to release Lolita. That was never a serious part of any kind of plan. That it was never a possibility. And it was a publicity stunt that they made, that certain people made a lot of money off of, and that's really unfortunate. But you animals that have been under human care, and don't get me wrong, the Miami Seaquarium is not a place that I support, and right. I was very much an advocate for moving Lolita somewhere else, but releasing her to the wild was never a possibility. Firstly, she had been under human care at that point for so long that there's no survival skills left. It's not something that that you can teach to it. This was a geriatric killer whale. So
Yeah.
so there was and there was a race against time too, because it was pretty well documented that she was not doing well, which is right when they started this publicity stunt as well.
Yeah.
So there's these are government decisions. This is not, it's not like the Miami Seaquarium either was like willfully keeping her from being released to the wild. It was never their decision.
Mm.
And so the governments make these decisions, and there's a reason for that. And it's because the welfare of the animal. So releasing killer whales has been tried. It doesn't work. Under a specific set of circumstances, it definitely could. Say if Lolita had been there for 3 months, absolutely, it's 100% possible. So there's considerations and things to think about. One of the main things that people didn't think about, and is also a reason that there would never have been a sea pen situation on the West Coast either, is because the southern resident killer whales are critically endangered. It's very real possibility that they will go extinct within our lifetime. And it's very, very sad. This is the first time that a species will go extinct where we know every single individual, we know their heritage, we know where they came from, because that's how few of them there are left and how well studied they are.
Yeah.
And so if you introduce an animal like that, there's a huge risk of even if they're just in a sea pen, there's a huge risk of disease and essentially wiping out an entire population of critically endangered animals for the perceived benefit of one animal, which it wouldn't have even been a benefit at all. So, so yeah, I mean there's so many things to take into consideration, and when we release animals like sea otters or seals, these animals are tracked and sometimes they don't do well and they have to be recaptured, and that's just a reality of it. It's and releasing them to the wild is not a fairy tale ending of Free Willy. Like it's hard to survive out there, and a lot
Right.
of releases don't make it. That's just the reality of it. So yeah, I think there's some romanticizing of it that goes on that really drives me crazy, as obviously I've been on my little high horse here for a little bit. But yeah, it's the wild is not like this fairy tale magical place to be. It's tough to survive out there, and so
Yeah.
there's a lot of things to consider, and not just the welfare of that one individual, but the welfare of the species, and also the logistics of this are, especially when you're talking of a killer whale, this is insane. And I think that when somebody, one of their, like, I don't know, somebody donated a bunch of money, some famous guy, I don't remember, to Miami Seaquarium to supposedly release her or whatever.
Mm.
And it was not even, it was like $1 million or something. That's not even close to the amount of money that you
Mm.
would need to do this.
Right.
And then even when people talk about like sea pens as the solution, they're not understanding that a sea pen of the magnitude that you're talking about, that's it's many multiple millions of dollars every single year to maintain a sea pen. Sea pens are very difficult to maintain.
Mm.
And then you still have to staff them, you still have to train the animal, you still have to feed the animal. So you know, and who's going to pay for that? And everybody will say, well, Miami Seaquarium should have to pay for that. Yes, but we know that that's not going to happen. So
Right.
it was just, it was silly. It was really a bummer that we couldn't,
Do something
uh,
else for her.
yes,
Yeah.
because ultimately, what, what I want, what the animal rights activists want, what everybody wanted was a better life for that whale.
Right.
Um, and we were all on the same side. So if we can just, you know, meet somewhere in the middle and understand that there's no oddly enough, when you're talking about an orca, there was no black and white solution.
Right.
You know, there was something in the middle, and we could have met somewhere, and we could have made, you know, made something better for
Something
that
better.
animal. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it got politicized, and everybody was yelling at each other, and then it ended the way that it did. So
Yeah, I think that that was like the biggest thing that you were talking about, like with the sea pen and the, possibly getting the endangered southern residents sick as well, because that's a big thing. And then also, I'm sure moving her logistically, like you were saying, from Miami to where her, uh, I guess like that was where she was captured from, right? Was the, um, off of the Salish Sea, or in the Salish Sea rather. So um I feel like that's also another big thing that I just didn't realize too. That's also a very important part of this whole thing. But like you said, most people just wanted a better life for her. Um so hopefully we could use that like as an example in the future of hopefully what to do better. And um like, do you think, yeah.
I'd like to think that we could do that in the future, but I don't think that there's there's people that are just in it for like the whale sanctuary project, for instance. If you look it up, they're trying to make this giant sea pen where all the whales and dolphins in the world can go and live, and it's just a money grab. They are accepting donations. They're not building anything. They're not doing anything. They don't have permits to do anything. And so it's really just yeah, it's unfortunate that we have like very extreme sides. And part of the problem too is the extreme pro zoo and aquarium. And obviously I work in zoos and aquariums, and so I fully am an advocate for the good that zoos and aquariums can do, but we also need to accept that there are things that zoos and aquariums need to improve, and that should be part of the discussion. So there's a problem on each side of this. There's
Right.
the anti-captivity people who are not willing to discuss even the slightest bit of good that zoos and aquariums can do, even though I fully believe they do know that. And then we have the pro zoo and aquarium who are not willing to admit that there's any problem at all with zoos and aquariums, and so we just have to meet in the middle, because there is a gray area, and there's things that zoos and aquariums need to be getting better at, and we should be recognizing that, and we should be vocal about it. It's okay to be improving something.
Yeah.
It's part of the process. So it's nothing's perfect. So
Right.
there's issues on both sides, and I've always advocated for. I'm a strong, I'm strongly critical of zoos and aquariums that I don't think are doing the right thing, and places that I will support and places that I won't support. And I'm very vocal about that. And I think that that's important.
Yeah, I think it is it sorry. It is important because um it's for the lives of obviously these animals, but like with each year I feel like that keeps coming, like we are learning more like scientifically, and like how better husbandry works, right?
Hmm.
So we could hopefully get more and better care, more, hopefully aligned to their natural environment. And like you said, there's a good medium, right? Like a lot of these sea otters would unfortunately not be here if there weren't places like the Monterey Bay Aquarium, or other places that are really doing the hard work and advocating. And like you said, they had a science down, right, of how to, rear them. And that takes a lot of trial and error, I'm sure, in the beginning of when that was done, to figure out how to, keep them in a healthy state. So to be able to notice when there are, I guess, places that aren't doing it right, so we could try to keep that level of, okay, if you are going to take the responsibility of having a wild animal, it should be the best possible care that you can do, that's available.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, when animals have to stay under human care, it's not just a want or a need. You have an obligation to do the best
Yeah.
that you can for those animals, and most places are doing that. And then there's also the sort of unmeasurable level of the value of these animals, because really with the perfect storm of COVID and a lot of rescued sea otters, like Joey, like you mentioned earlier, there is now a massive uh, following and love for sea otters that didn't exist 4 or 5 years ago. A lot of people didn't know about these animals, certainly didn't know about their environmental impact, And they learned that because we had animals in zoos and aquariums that we could share with people, that are ambassadors for their species, and they are actively making people build connections and want to change the world, and want to support organizations like Alaka Alliance, and repopulate sea otters, across the Pacific Northwest. So there's a value in that as well that's hard to measure, and I think that, yeah, those, especially if you're taking world class care of the animals that you have, there's really not a lot of downside to having rescued and
Right.
care for and into their geriatric years these animals that are teaching people about how important they are and why we should care.
Yeah. Hi, wild ones. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Find Your Wild podcast. This episode is sponsored by my clothing brand, Femme Sauvage, and you can find a discount code and link in the description. So check it out. We have a lot of amazing designs, and $5 of the proceeds goes to different charities. So please feel free to check it out and enjoy the rest of the episode. Thanks so much. Yeah, that's like the perfect happy medium, right? Like they wouldn't have survived without our help, but then they can be an ambassador and look at how many people have grown to love and appreciate the importance of, wild otters everywhere.
Right.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you too in regards to like the southern resident orcas is so I know that the big problem is their diet, right? So they're focused on the Chinook salmon and there's not as many of them. Now, with the sea pens, is there like an issue uh with fishermen having like sea pens of fish that like also get other fish sick, or is that a
Yeah,
part of it?
that is there's a lot of problems. The food is a big issue, so they need, a specific fatty type of salmon, the Chinook salmon, in order to reproduce properly, and then also in order to feed their calves, and even just like without considering just survive themselves. So, yes, they
Right.
can eat other types of food, but it's not what they need, to survive. So they do specifically seek out, that super fatty salmon. And yeah, there's absolutely problems with disease introduction from farmed fish. So that's a part of the campaign. There's also, dam removals. So there's, a lot of, dam removals have been happening, and, fish are swimming freely in rivers that they have not been able to previously, because even though we have fish ladders, there's been a lot of science that shows that fish ladders are largely far less effective than we thought that they were, and so the removal of those dams is really helping those fish, get to their breeding grounds, and hopefully help repopulate. So the fish is a big problem. Um, Boat noise, and some of that's being addressed here in Washington. The distance, that you can get to these animals has increased to, I want to say it's 1,000. A 1,000 feet or 1,000 yards. I can't remember. There's a big difference between a
Yeah.
1,000 feet and 1,000 yards, but
Something like
but
that.
pardon me. But yeah, anyway, they tripled the distance, from last year. So this year, those regulations went into effect. So hopefully that'll help to not disturb them as much. Another problem, unfortunately, is inbreeding. They're an incredibly inbred species, and there's really like, I think like two males make up at least 50% of the genes
Oh,
of,
wow.
of all of the offspring. So it's really, that's a big problem, and I don't know. There's nothing that, what can you really do about that? So that's causing issues. So it's just issue upon issue upon issue. So I think that, the focus is just on some of those anthropogenic, things that we are causing, like the dams and the overfishing, because the salmon is also endangered because of the overfishing. So
Right.
focusing on the things that we can change, to try to help that population out, because they've been, I've been following it really closely. My latest video was it didn't do very well because it was really sad and nobody wanted to watch it. But
Yeah.
it was about J61, who was the calf born to the mom who is known for carrying her dead calves for periods
Yeah.
of time,
The
and
the tour of grief, unfortunately,
yes,
right? Yeah.
and unfortunately she's on another one right now. So so that's really sad. But there is some good news. There's J62, who was just confirmed to be like eclipse. There was another southern resident, and so that's an experienced mom and with an experienced grandma, and so that whale seems to be doing well. So there's hope, but we have to keep trying.
Yeah. Do you think that also were do you think that like the initial captures for orcas in captivity were from the Salish Sea? Do you think that had a big like cause in that population?
It certainly didn't help.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely it dropped. I don't know the exact numbers. Listeners can look it up, but it dropped their
Yeah.
numbers to, I want to say it was like low 70s. Apart from just being like bad for the population, it was just horrible
Yeah.
in general, just absolutely horrific. The practice of that. So that was really terrible. And but after that, the population did recover. It got up into the 90s, like the mid 90s. And so it was recovering and had done pretty well, and now we're back down here to I think 74, 75 individuals.
Mm.
So there's something else going on. So it's easy to blame that, but that's not super helpful in that it already happened. It hasn't happened again. I don't think that
Right.
it will happen again, because of how publicized that would be, and how just like across the board nobody wants to do that anymore.
Right.
um so so really we need to focus on like yeah, that was really terrible, but their population did recover and now we're headed back down, so there's something else
Right.
going on. But yeah,
Yeah.
it shouldn't ever happen again.
Right. Yeah. And like the other focus should be on like some of like and I'm sure like there's like pollutants and that other uh stuff. I actually I have like a clothing brand, so this design right here, I donate $5 of like the sales towards like whatever animals on that design. So
Oh, it's
I
fun.
donate to the Orca Conservancy who focuses
Mhm.
on the southern residents too. And they focus on all the different aspects of
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're awesome. So
Yeah, and like you mentioned, the pollutant situation is a massive problem too, because they're apex predators essentially, and so all of those toxins and things that you get, like, it's hard to explain in a, we're this isn't here to be like a chemistry class or anything, but like basically, there's a certain level of toxins that every organism builds up throughout their life, and when you're at the bottom of the food chain, that's fine, but then the organisms that eat those things at the bottom of the food chain, then they have, however 10 times as much toxins, and then the animals that eat those, and then the animals that eat those. So when you're all the way at the top with orcas, then the level of toxins that they build up are massive, and part of the problem is that they are leaching those into their milk. So the moms pass that on to the calves in massive amounts very quickly, and that is a big problem too. And it doesn't just come from it does come from unnatural anthropogenic sources, so we need to work on those types of things, but it does also come from natural sources too.
right. So yeah, these poor southern residents, they have a lot coming at them.
They really do. It's really hard, and I live in Washington, and so and I get to see them, so it's very hard to be like this close to a situation and just feel really helpless a lot of the time.
Yeah, yeah. I do think that every I was so sad about Tahlequah with her losing her calf. Like
Hmm.
I heard somebody else talking about a story of like I think she saw from the beach like that she was like I guess it was when she was letting go the first time
Mm.
of her calf, and that uh the other surrounding orcas were just trying to like keep her up, and it like made me burst into tears. It's just their intelligence and Clearly like they're so family oriented, I think is like another reason why like they're just such a beloved animal, right? Like they're like how we can just relate to them in so many different aspects like that.
Yeah, I think what we really relate to is the socialness of them.
Yeah.
Because all animals, and we often will like equate that with intelligence, but I think it's mostly like the social nature of them. Like they they build these relationships. It's just much easier to relate to when we, as an incredibly social species ourselves, like we can just see ourselves in them, much more so than like a snake or something like that.
Right.
Even though everything has like a level of intelligence, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the social aspects of it are hard, and it's hard not to see her as grieving, even though there's lots of different possibilities for the reason that she's doing it. It's not super normal. They don't all do this, so but
Right.
it's really whatever the reason, it's heartbreaking, and it's yeah, it's something that hopefully people are serious about wanting to change, and it does seem like change is happening. I'm not sure if it's quite as fast as I would like, but it does seem
Right.
that there's things that are happening.
Yeah, I feel like people are more moved to, I think, recognizing the importance of and the value of animals in the environment. I was I feel like a bunch of my podcasts I talk about how there's, I think, through a lot of humanity, how we looked at animals being like, what kind of value do they bring to me, right? It's kind of like the beginning of like why see a lot of animals had almost gone extinct, right? Like they just, okay, we're gonna go out there and just kill them, but like not like, they're just animals, but there's not, there's not just an overabundance of animals out there for, and they're not just made for us to be here to take, they have a single importance in their or multiple importance in their own environment, and each animal has like their own unique importance of what they provide
Yeah.
globally too.
I mean, and like because we always come full circle. Like the same thing. Sea otters were hunted basically to extinction in certain areas because of their fur during the fur trade, and it was the Marine Mammal Protection Act that turned the tide and started bringing them back. And now people are in love with sea otters, because of the value that sea otters bring to the world, and not just because of what they can do for us. So, yeah, I think that's super important, and I think that that's something that people can be taught. You're not born just be selfishly wanting everything to be about you. That's something that we can teach, and something that I see every day when people come through the doors to the zoo, and they build connections with these animals, and they realize that there's a personality in there, an animality in there,
Right.
and it's not just it's not just about what we want.
Yeah. We can learn so much from being able to just interact with them. Like some people would never be able to see those animals in their lifetime if it weren't for, important zoos and aquariums, but like people that are doing it uh the right way.
Yeah.
I guess it's a bit off the subject, but I've been seeing a lot of videos of people harassing there's a lot of people harassing wildlife in general, but I think that there's a bunch of these videos of sea lions, people going up to sea lions, and I don't know, what's your view of people not respecting like wildlife and their space?
I just it obviously makes me mad for it's like, and I try to approach it in a way of like, obviously there's just a piece of education that's missing, and we need to educate people, but I cannot for the life of me understand why you want to approach a wild animal.
I can't either,
I
especially sea
just
lion. They're very cool, but they freak me out. Like their teeth, like
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
they
so
were
a sea lion's closest land relative is a bear. So
oh wow.
would you approach a bear? And maybe some people would, because I've seen the videos from like Yellowstone and stuff like that. It's giving it's giving letting your kid go up and take a selfie with a bison. Like it's wild. And the other thing to consider with especially with sea lions is that they harbor a bacteria in their mouths that is like horrific. If you want to really mess up your like Google search history, Google seal finger. And this is like sort of the layman's term for what it's called when you get an infection, which you will get if you get bit by a sea lion. And it's just a flesh eating like life ending bacterial infection. So it's
Yikes.
I just and aside from that, you are very likely to get injured. I don't understand how you can't see that you are distressing the animals when you do this. So the animals don't want you near them. They don't want you to approach them. You are actively harassing them and disrupting like their lives and their livelihood by doing this. So yeah, it's I'm pretty vocal about it. I've had to yell at people and shame people in the past. But it's
Barely.
just don't, yeah, just don't. It's very easy to appreciate. We also, if you have any kind of smartphone, do you know what kind of a photo I can take at this from
Oh
a
yeah.
1,000 feet away? I don't need to be anywhere near an animal to take the best picture you've ever seen of them without disturbing them in the least. So it's just I don't understand the I understand the desire to build a connection with wild animals, but not at the price of just harassing them
Yeah,
relentlessly. So
it's interesting because it's like obviously like you said, right, there's like one part where there's like a lack of education. I also feel like there's two parts where it's like this kind of selfish like oh like there used to be the Tinder profile of the people like with the lions and the tigers
mm,
and like having like that was a trend and people are now
yeah.
like yeah that was stupid
Yeah.
so so
Yeah,
there's
no.
like that part of it like that you selfishly like need to be in and like also the second part being like not reading body language which is like also kind of weird. Those are the kind of people I assume are the people that don't take a hint when you want them to leave your house when you're tired at the end of a party or something.
Yes, yes. It's like 9:30 and you're like, "Oh my God, I should have been in bed an hour ago. Please go home." Yeah, no, and I that's the part where I try to remember that not everyone is an animal person because people will ask
Yeah.
me at work all the time like, "How can you tell if they're enjoying something? How can you tell if they're not enjoying something?" And for me, I'm just like, "But it's so obvious." But um but not everyone has grown up around animals. Not everyone understands the science behind animal behavior, and I have to remember that I've read books, I've studied this. Like
Sure.
this is my career, this is what I've done. So I like, I do understand the body language. But yeah, it does feel very much like how can you not see this? Like you're just stressing these animals, and there is, like you said, a selfish aspect to it of like, oh well, I want a selfie, or like, no, this sea lion's going to be my friend or something, or I don't know, just like weird
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah. And also like I think personally like just the coolest part about like going out and observing wildlife is to see their natural behaviors, right? Like is to see like oh, I almost want to just be a fly on the wall so I could just take a glimpse into their life, like take a
Yeah.
couple pictures like you said from your iPhone you can take amazing pictures
Yeah.
from very very far away. So there really is no need to I don't
Yeah,
know,
I
put
think
yourself in danger
there's
either.
also just like the the view, like the Disney style view that people have of wild animals that are just like they think they're the little mermaid out there, and can just go be like friends with the animals. And it's just like, yeah, it's just about
Yeah,
respect of
healthy
the
respect.
animals. Yeah.
Like
So
you could like it's right there's this line of like, with people also like I think of like sharks, right? Like they've been demonized and made out to be like, the second you jump in the water they're going to just attack you. That's not true. But like also they're not puppies and you shouldn't be like trying to like hug them and stuff, right? Like
yeah, because I
so
think One of the highest attack rates is in I think nurse sharks, I want to say, and nurse sharks are known for being a very like docile species of shark, but it's because people are swimming up and trying to hug them, and then they attack you, of course. So it's
Yeah. Yeah. I actually I was in the Bahamas for my sister-in-law's bachelorette party, and we were on like a catamaran and we were swimming, snorkeling, and there was a shark sleeping underneath the thing. So I grew up actually being like having like a terrified phobia of sharks, but actually like just like getting older and like seeing people and like obviously learning and like I've gotten over that fear. So like I was able to like I was like, wow, that's like so cool. It's just laying there. And some guy literally dove down and was trying to touch the shark, and I was like, oh, I'm getting out of here before that's like a
yeah.
disaster. And they were from another like tour boat, or so like our tour guide was like, you can't do that,
Yeah.
stop that.
Yeah,
Like,
stop doing that. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean that's another important thing is to like look into the types of tours that you're doing and make
right.
sure that you're doing like ethical things. That was a big thing for me when I lived in Vancouver, BC. We went whale watching on a regular basis, and one time I went with a company that we got way too close to a humpback whale, and we never went back to that company again.
Mm.
So the it's important to recognize those things and to yeah do things with ethical companies that are not going to allow you to harass the wildlife.
Yeah, like what are some things I guess that people like if they were to like try to obviously focus more towards like an eco-friendly um like is there anything that like you could look for in regards to that, or you just have to look more carefully at the reviews?
Um, yeah, I mean, I definitely think you should look at the reviews. Look at, I mean, if they're posting pictures of, I just did a video about this because this has been driving me nuts, but like if they're posting pictures of them petting gray whales like on the side of the boat, and you're like, "Wow, that's crazy. I've never seen anything like that." Well, yeah, because you probably shouldn't. Like that's just wild. Or if they're, advertising that you get to hug um tiger cubs, like come on, like we can use our critical thinking and understand that like okay, where are these tiger cubs coming from, why are we doing
Right.
this anyway, what's the value in doing this type of thing. And yeah, I don't I even I need to look into it a little bit more, but I have a hard time. People often ask me, oh, I'm going to go on this swim with the otters place like this. I don't know if you've seen
Mm.
these places that you can swim with. I think they're Asian small clawed otters. And
Oh yeah.
I'm really very skeptical of this practice. I don't think that because oftentimes it's like in this person's like backyard pool. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what are we doing? And these are, let's see, this is all around like North America, like in the
Right.
US. Like it's not like they're not somewhere overseas or anything. So I don't understand what's going on there, and I'm often like I don't really think I would never do that. It's
Yeah, and it's like important too, like for people to realize, like you're hip. I don't think people necessarily realize, oh, I'm having this immediate connection with this animal, right? I get to pet them, like what you were using the example of, like petting the gray whales. It reminds me of the accident that happened in maybe it's Indonesia. Rachel Moore, she took a picture. It's like that. I don't know if you've seen online, but like the humpback whale eye, and it's like the galaxy in her eyes, and uh, you know, the more you habituate, I guess, like animals to being closer to boats,
yeah,
like this calf got ran over, and like the I don't know, like it cut like part of her mouth off, so she had a very painful and slow death, which is very unfortunate. But that's what happens when we habituate these animals by being close to us. Like they don't recognize now the danger. So if you really love something,
yeah,
you know, leave it, like like
yeah,
set it free, like observe from a distance, so like because you want them to live out their life, you don't want
yeah.
those type of accidents to happen.
Yeah, there's definitely an out of sight, out of mind. Like, oh, I had this instant gratification, got to like pet this gray whale, and then it doesn't really matter that it got killed by a ship strike 2 weeks later. And ship strikes is a huge problem
Yeah.
with not just baleen whales, but with all marine life. So So yeah, absolutely. I mean, and so it just boils down to, I think, like making sure that you're informed about what you're doing and the encounters that you're having, and a lot of the places will kind of they'll advertise the type of experience that you're going to have. So you really don't anytime that they're allowing you to get close enough that you could touch a wild animal, just that's not that's not the thing we should be doing.
Right.
let's
Right.
let's let's stop doing weird things in 2025. 25 is going to be the year we stop doing weird things.
Yeah, exactly. There's other weird things to do, but just leave
Yeah.
the animals out of it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, Kristen, what's next for you? Are you just still, you know, waiting to see what viral videos come out that you can react to, or what are your plans now for the future?
Yeah, I mean, I was super focused on our YouTube channel. I think the marine biology education route is something that I'm really passionate about, and it's a way that I talked about how coming through the doors of a zoo or aquarium or seeing these animals in the wild is a great way to build connections. But not everybody has that opportunity, and so I try to provide that for people who can't go to these places or can't see these things, and learning about these animals. So yeah, so I'm just super focused on YouTube, and that's kind of where I get a lot of my um je ne sais quoi, like the whatever you sort of feel is your purpose in life, I guess, is
Yeah.
to, and that's kind of where I'm at, and we're just continuing, hopefully to the moon with that. I love that it's growing, and things like that. And then I have secondary things. I've got, my Instagram is kind of a miniature version of that, and TikTok, if it's still around, is sort of
Right.
a similar thing. But yeah, I'd love to in the coming years, I'd love to get out and do some more like on-site kind of stuff. For instance, the Ocean Conservation Namibia is another organization that I support all the time, and they are sorry, ferrets. They're running around, and
That's okay.
feral creatures in my house. And so they've invited me to go out and rescue seals with them. I don't know if you've seen their work, but they rescue a lot of the Cape fur seals from disentanglements, and
I have seen
you've
that. Is
probably
that
seen their videos because
yeah,
they're pretty big on YouTube.
that would be
Um,
very cool. Is that the one that had the seals that they thought had rabies or did have rabies?
yeah, they did have rabies. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
they had a
crazy.
rabies outbreak in those Cape fur seals, and I did a video on that too. But yeah, so I'd love to get out and do a little bit more like in the field kind of videos,
Yeah.
and be a little bit more up close and personal. When I was growing up, I really idolized Steve Irwin and Jeff
Oh yeah.
Corwin, and that was what I wanted. So I was like, I'm gonna have my own TV show, and no one ever offered me my own TV show, so I just made it myself.
Same. Like, like the
Yeah,
podcast, like my
yeah,
podcast. Yeah, exactly. I feel like that is the wonderful thing about YouTube, and that I think that surprised a lot of probably like people that worked in TV and everything was that people really are looking for this more like specific information and like, oh, I'm kind of interested in that. Oh, there's like going to be somebody out there explaining that, and giving more context and more detail, and not just finding like a one-off thing on TV. Like there's a whole channel dedicated to this. That's so cool. And people can like broaden their interests too, which is really awesome, and what I think is really cool about YouTube and like these kind of things.
yeah. Yeah, it's a great opportunity for people to find exactly what they're looking for, like you said, and
Yeah.
not have to wade through too much of what they don't want to see.
Yeah. And you do a really good job of like, I feel like properly educating people and like in a really nice way too. Like, it's like not like stop. I don't know.
Yeah,
You
I
just have
mean,
a very nice way.
I try.
Yeah.
Inevitably, I do get accused of being a little bit too too heavy-handed with some of that stuff, but it doesn't matter. It's
Yeah.
I'm never gonna please everyone. But yeah, we really try to lead by example of when we say something, we back it up with our resources, or our sources, I should say. The sources are like we always cite our studies and it's not just like
Right.
I'm not citing like my uncle's Facebook page. Like this is these are actual scientific studies that we use to provide information and yeah, really try to do our best, and inevitably sometimes we get some things wrong and people correct us, and then we accept that criticism and we move
And move
forward.
forward.
So yeah.
Because the truth is, like, the facts are the facts. And
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I had such a great conversation with you, and it was so nice to get to meet you and chat with you. I'll be sure to link your information below, but if you want to just like let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, so I'm KPassionate, and probably if you put that in the search bar, you should find me in a variety of different places. Sometimes there's a dash in there or a period in there somewhere, but it's all mostly the same. I'm on TikTok for as long as it is still available, Instagram and YouTube primarily for that kind of educational content. But yeah. Thanks for having me. I love doing podcasts. I think they're really fun. I love having conversations with people, and also my dad is a passionate podcast listener, and he gets so excited whenever I'm on podcasts. So I have to do them for Pops.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Pops, if you're listening, thanks for listening in the future. That's awesome. Great. Well, I'm so glad I got to meet you. And thank you so much, everybody, for listening and tuning in. And I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.
Revel in the moment like a river flowing to the sea. I feel the energy of life force flowing all through me, and I'll allow it all to dance with my body and play. And no one could ever convince me to give my power away.